It's time to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maraday.
Original Sports Podcast. Hey, it's Mark Maraday, and my guest today is Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. He is a writer for them. He covers the NFL, he covers fantasy stuff, and he has a podcast called Locked On Fantasy. I guess football, right?
Yeah.
How you doing today?
Hopefully. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to you. Hey, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little Jeopardy right out of the gates, though, honestly. Tell me about your experience. I know that's probably been a lifelong thing that you've just been hanging on to for years.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been more than 20 years, believe it or not. So it was early in the day. It's before they actually doubled the money. So that tells you something if you've been watching the show for quite a long time. So kind of midway through their run at this point, and it was a great honor to have played the game while Alex Trebek was still there, and that was still, again, rather early into his run, but he was very nice to me, and I was much younger then, so he was very encouraging and inspiring to help me just kind of go forward with the career that I was looking into.
Any words of wisdom that you've hung on to all these years?
Yeah, he just said good luck in whatever you do in life, and I thought that was really cool. So yeah. Because at that time I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do, just finishing up school. So he's just as nice as everyone said he was, and he definitely is a big loss. And the show's a little different without him, but it goes on, and it's still very fascinating to me.
So you still watch the show. In your opinion, who would you like to see be the host now?
Well, that's a tough question. So far, Ken Jennings was pretty good. So we'll see. I think he might be the favorite right now, but I have enjoyed the extra host, Katie Couric, I think did a great job. So anyone with the professional experience of asking questions and has a good personality and can connect with the contestants, I think they can do a good job. But ultimately, maybe they'll stick with this format of rotating hosts, because it's kind of interesting just to see their different styles and get into it.
I see Aaron Rodgers is going to be a guest host on there. Do you see that?
Yeah, that'll be the first week of April is when those shows will air. So I think they're going on 2-week stints here. So right now, I think it's Dr. Oz. So if any fans of him are out there, they can check it out. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers is going to be interesting. He did win Celebrity Jeopardy a few years ago. So, and I know he's got more reasons to be out there in California now. So it should be a lot of fun to watch him do it.
I mean, he was a Cal Bear, and that's not an easy school to go to.
Yeah, and maybe can cross over to Hollywood. Maybe that's in his future. That's definitely his future with his marriage plans. So
yeah,
may all line up well here for that to stint. And I think a lot of new fans of Aaron Rodgers are going to be found here beyond just all the Packers fans who will be watching.
How would this sound? And this is Jeopardy with Vinnie Iyer. Could you see yourself doing it?
If they ever ask, but I'm probably like way down on the list. I'm probably like, I don't know, if they had thousands, maybe I'm in the 10,000s if I'm lucky. So yeah, it would be a lot of fun. It is definitely not as easy as it looks with all the questions you have to ask, and you got to be a host, and you got to be good with your vocabulary and reading, but also you got to be personable and connect with a lot of different types of people.
I mean, that's the career you're in right now, though. I mean, you're out there, you're writing, you're talking to people, look at us right now. We're just chit-chatting away about Jeopardy that you were on 20 years ago. So, you just don't know what's going to come down the pike, right?
No, but I'll be here just in case. Like the phone rings, I won't say no. So let's just
all right. Hey, let's talk a little NFL then. Let's go into who you believe are the winners in free agency so far, because I think it's been kind of lame personally.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet. I think the Buccaneers are winners because their team didn't break up. I mean, basically the only two decisions they haven't quite made here are Leonard Fournette, and they can replace a running back, and Antonio Brown. Remember, he was really their third receiver last year, and they've got plenty. With their tight ends, they got 3 of those that are pretty good. They've got their 2 main guys coming back at wide receiver. So Antonio Brown at some point may return for a bargain deal here for one more year, but really the Bucks didn't break up. All their guys are together, and they signed everyone. They got Tom Brady to restructure his deal, so they're locked in with him. The Patriots tried to keep up, and they did their best. I mean, bringing back Cam Newton, that's going to be the question mark. Is he going to come through? Are they kind of winding up to get a quarterback in the draft? But you have to like their two moves there, tight end Hunter Henry and Joni Smith. They want to be this different style of team where they're working on the inside of the field, Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar at wide receiver. So it's different. They're flipping the script a little bit, trying to become a power running team, maybe with Cam Newton and whoever they bring in at quarterback. But that's the best way they can operate. I think that's their shortest path to winning games at the moment until they figure out an elite quarterback situation. So I think those two teams have done well. I think the Browns have actually done pretty well for themselves. They upgraded the secondary, two big holes that they had. Got Troy Hill and John Johnson from the Rams. So those are two guys that can make a lot of plays for them. And Cleveland didn't need a lot. For once, the Browns didn't have to invest to get that much better. So not a lot of big moves there, but the Browns came through. But otherwise, rather quiet and underwhelming, you would say, across the league.
You think some of the cuts are yet to come that are going to change the dynamics of some teams? I know I always talk about the Steelers because I'm a Pittsburgh guy by heart, but they cut loose Steven Nelson. Didn't really impact me. I'll be quite honest with you. I like the Cam Sutton signing. They lost Dupree. Mike Hilton went to Cincinnati as a slot corner. But are there other guys who you see in free agency, they're going to get cut loose for financial reasons that might impact some of these teams?
Well, I think what's happened here is teams have gotten savvier with the cap, and I think they've been able to react a little more quickly because the cap has been set lower instead of expanding. I mean, they know things are going to get better next year. So I think most of the teams have managed pretty well. The Bears and Saints were in a lot of trouble, but they managed it. The Bears had to say goodbye to Kyle Fuller, but I don't know if that was all just cap related. The Saints did move on from a lot of guys that they had to, but that comes with the game as well. You can't restructure all the contracts to save all the money. And again, you look at the Chiefs and you look at Eric Fisher and look at what they had with Mitchell Schwartz, and you're thinking, why did they get rid of their starting tackles? But then you look at the interest out there, these two guys is not much. When you're older, have a lot of injuries, it's really hard to get back and get signed to the NFL.
Sure. And there are plenty of teams who need linemen. So, they're willing to take a risk and I guess we'll see what happens. How about losers in free agency? Because there have been some teams, like I mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of people were saying, they've taken a giant step backwards. But, who do you think, in your opinion?
Well, I think you start with the Jaguars because they had a lot of money, but I didn't really see any moves that stood out. I think they filled some holes and they got some players, Marvin Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, some other players that invested in. I know they had a lot of money. They had to make some changes, but there's nothing there that stands out for the Jaguars. If you look at the Texans' collective group of moves here, you're not quite sure what they're doing. It's like they just are finding enough guys to assemble a roster here, and that's all they care about. In 2021, they got also the Deshaun Watson saga and the controversy and how that plays out hanging over them as well. So it hasn't been good for the Texans so far. And you look at the Ravens, I mean, they haven't really upgraded a lot for Lamar Jackson here early in free agency. They also got their pass rush gutted. So that team a little bit more vulnerable. I think they are in position to slide out of the contention here. And the Colts, I thought they'd be a little bit more aggressive. I know they made the trade for Carson Wentz, but they ended up bringing back T.Y. Hilton. I thought they would be a little bit more diverse with their spending and get some help, but they've lost some guys defensively and settling for Hilton returning. I thought, again, some of these teams would be more aggressive for the top wide receivers, where in the end you saw the Giants come through with Kenny Galladay, probably making the biggest move of them all.
You think Galladay was worth that kind of cash, though? Like, I kind of scratched my head when I saw that, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a lot of money for him."
It's a lot of money, yes, but I think the Giants were looking at Daniel Jones, and look, this is a make or break year for Daniel Jones.
Sure.
I mean, it is year 3, that's it, and you have to get him a number 1 receiver. I think it really helps because it allows them to do a lot of things. Darius Slayton can be a complementary deep threat. You have Sterling Shepard; he does his best work in the slot, so you can put him there. So you have 3 guys like that. And then you added Kyle Rudolph at tight end. here. So now you have a legitimate blocking tight end. You expect to get Saquon Barkley back healthy. So this offense is starting to look pretty good here for Jason Garrett and Joe Judge. The real question mark, I think, is getting that second tackle. I don't think they can put Thomas out there at left tackle again. They used a first round pick on him. So maybe another first rounder here at number 11 overall might be the missing piece here for the offensive line. And then you have all these pretty good weapons here for the Giants. So Kenny Galladay, he wanted the 18 million per season. He got it from one team. That basically was the one team that was willing to do it. It was a bit of a surprise. The Giants can be a bit conservative with money and those type of moves, but when Kenny Galladay is healthy, this guy can do everything. He's got size, speed. He can make big plays all over the field, but also finish some drives in the red zone. So I think he has the potential to really take off with Daniel Jones. And they had to do something to help Jones. And they've seen the Eagles make some changes. Washington had some success. Dallas should be better offensively here. So the Giants couldn't just stay put here. They had to make a move to try to compete better in this division.
Let's bounce to Dallas real quick since you mentioned him. Would you have inked Dak to that contract? Do you think that was a good move by them?
I think if you've got one of those guys you think is going to be special and has a chance to win a Super Bowl, you have to keep him around. And I know you look at last season, it was unfortunate with the ankle injury, but he was putting up some big numbers. He was putting the team on his back. You look at the offense now, it could be picking up where he left off, and he comes in there, he's going to change everything. I think by seeing what kind of offense they had with Dak Prescott, it actually helped his value. Let's say, look, he does a lot in this offense. He's settled in here. He's in the third year now with Kellen Moore. Everything lines up for him to have a special comeback season here for the Cowboys. And yeah, they still need to figure out some things defensively. They're not a perfect team. They got to rebuild the offensive line a little bit, but we know that quarterback is the biggest thing that's going to give you a chance to compete in this league. And you look, Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones, and you have Ryan Fitzpatrick in Washington. But the Cowboys have to feel pretty good about their quarterback edge in the division with him coming back.
Sure. Hey, let's look at the salary cap then, because he got a nice chunk of that salary cap. They've got Amari Cooper, Zeke Elliott, and Dak, who are eating up a ton of that money. What do you think's going to happen with that cap? Because this year it was 182.5 or almost 183. What do you think's going to happen with it, with the new TV contract and everything coming about? Where do you think it'll land next year?
I think there's a chance it could go up by 15 to 20 million. I think there's that potential. I mean, it has to make up for the usual bump it didn't have this year, plus the expanded revenue. So I think sometimes some of these owners are wise to that before it happens and know they can push the money back till next year, because next year is going to be different, a lot different. So I think they use that to their advantage. Now, the Cowboys are trying to keep all their offensive pieces together as long as possible. And the Cowboys are going to win a Super Bowl. It's going to be by scoring a lot of points. I think defensively, a lot of holes. They seem to shore up some things, then all of a sudden other things fall apart. So this is a team that needs to kind of win here in the next couple of years, because then you have to start paying CeeDee Lamb. Do you keep Michael Gallup? And then that part of your offense starts to break up. Your offensive line is going to continue to deteriorate. So all these teams have put themselves in, we have to win in 2 or 3 years when you invest that kind of money.
Is that what's going to happen with somebody like the Browns too? Because, they're going to have to pay Mayfield, and then, the receivers are going to come due here shortly. Chubb, what's it going to look like for them?
Yeah, this is the window that you have to take advantage of. Baker Mayfield, we'll see what his contract looks like next. I mean, I still think there's some things he has to do to say that he's going to get what the money that Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, they're going to get from the same first-round class. So I don't know what you're going to see. I think this is a critical year for Baker Mayfield, too. I know he kind of was corrected here in the offense with Kevin Stefanski, but a lot of it was still based on play action and the running game, and Baker didn't necessarily put the team on his back. So we'll see how it goes here. Do they bring back Odell Beckham Jr. into the fold? Ultimately, do they make a decision on him later, go in a different direction in the draft? Do they get enough defensive reinforcements? But I think you're seeing a little bit of the Browns. I mean, you have pretty good defense on every level. You're pretty loaded now in the secondary. If Grant Delpit can come back, so you got Denzel Ward, you got the additions here on defense. I think they're still looking at getting Clowney potentially for their defensive line to help Garrett. So they're still working on it, but I think the Browns are well aware of this, that they have to take advantage of this because, again, the Ravens and Steelers might have a little bit of a slide here. That could help win the division. You don't know what's going to come out of the AFC South. So you want to be on that short list with the Chiefs and Bills to try to win this conference and get to the Super Bowl.
Is Deshaun Watson going to wear a Texans uniform to start the season? I mean, all these allegations coming out about him right now, it just amazes me. All of a sudden, bam, 14 people saying he did this. Is he going to wear a Texans uniform, or is this some sort of ploy to get him out of there?
Well, you look at Deshaun Watson right now, there can't be anything done about it because teams are not going to be wanting to get into this until they find out more, whether it's the NFL's probe or they put him on the exempt list, or you find out more from the legal process of what's going on here. So they're kind of in a holding pattern here. And I don't know. Maybe it'll come to a point where Deshaun Watson, the Texans just have to move him at some point. And the team that tries to acquire him is just going to have to be patient to see how things kind of play out with this, and knowing that they may not work really well, and that you might see Deshaun Watson derailed kind of from his NFL career. So it's a very tough situation. Now we're not sure if this was bubbling, and this is why there was some tension between the Texans front office and Deshaun Watson. We're not sure. So there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, but the one answer I think we have now is he's not being capable of being moved anytime soon.
Russ Wilson, then, all that tension with him out in Seattle, you think them getting Antonio Brown, because it seems like that's something he wants to happen out there, you think that they may appease him and that'll settle him?
Yeah, we'll have to see how that works with Russell Wilson. I still think he's going to be there for the long haul. They have to work things out. I think he finally spoke out, which was good because he should have that type of power. He's a quarterback that's been playing at a high level since he came into the league. He plays every game. He's as durable as it gets, and he puts the team on his back. And who knows what kind of team they would have been here in recent years when they've had some really shaky defense if they didn't have Russell Wilson at quarterback. So I think it's justifiable to start giving quarterbacks like that more power. Tom Brady, hopefully he'll set a trend here where the Packers started to listen to Aaron Rodgers. The Seahawks have to listen to Russ Wilson. Some of these guys are the key franchise guys, and they can say some things because they've had a ring and they've been the reason why this team has won a ring. So we'll see what happens. I do think the Seahawks need to diversify their offense a little bit. I think Gerald Everett is an intriguing part of the offense because it gives them a tight end with some upside if they want to use them a little bit more. That position has been kind of hit or miss, but Will Dissly and Gerald Everett, two pretty decent athletes that maybe get involved a little bit more. They could use that third receiving threat. I mean, Russ Wilson's right. They pretty much got into a habit if the deep ball wasn't there for DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, they stalled with their passing game. So they need one guy. I don't know if it's Antonio Brown, but someone to kind of get open in the middle of the field or kind of be that reliable possession receiver because you can move Lockett into the slot and feel comfortable about that. But to have two receivers only that teams know that if you take Metcalf out of the game, it was really hard for Wilson to get anything going. They have to change that here. And hopefully with the new offense, at least they realized that they needed a coordinator change.
Yeah, sure. It may be some healthy running backs too. I believe they had some issue at running back with some health issues, right?
Yeah, Chris Carson, he's been kind of very good when he's been out there, but he hasn't been able to be fully healthy. Carlos Hyde is now gone, so they don't have him as insurance. Rashad Penny was pretty much injured all of last year. So that's a team probably regretting taking Penny now because they could have used that first-round pick for probably something else at this point. But, yeah, Seattle, as good as their front office can be, some questionable moves always kind of linger over the team.
So the QB carousel then, you think it's done, or do you think a guy like Darnold inevitably gets moved? I mean, it's interesting because there's still some pieces that can move around there. I still see some teams jockeying with their money, maybe aligning themselves to make some money moves. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Sam Darnold is a literal toss-up at this point. Like, I really don't know what's going to happen. Like, conventional wisdom says number two, you have a pretty good quarterback with some high upside there, just take the guy. Sam Darnold's not going to take you potentially where Zach Wilson can. I just look at the physical attributes. Wilson is just it has so much upside in this league. Where Sam Darnold, you've had a pretty good sample size. I know he's had some injury issues. They haven't had exactly the greatest supporting cast. Adam Gase can mess with the quarterback's head and all that. So I'm not sure, but yeah, I think Darnold is still a strong candidate to be traded. I don't know exactly how it's going to go down, but the issue I have is where is he going to be traded at this point? Because all these other teams are either going to the draft, and you've seen guys like Mitchell Trubisky, now they've been relegated to backups. They are backup level at this point. So is Sam Darnold going to be traded somewhere to be a backup? And that's the weird question is like, is it going to be some wild trade where he goes to Seattle and they have a USC reunion of some sorts with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson ends up with Robert Saleh, the Jets. Maybe some wild thing like that might happen. Then you know that quarterback's not going to be taken at number 2. So I want to think the Jets want to upgrade from Sam Darnold, but they got to have some kind of trade partner and they have to have some kind of a plan if they keep Darnold. And those are hard to read right now.
Yeah, because you got Wentz moved on. They're putting their eggs in the basket of Jalen Hurts. Pittsburgh signing 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger to a new deal. I would like to see them have a second team guy that could step right in. I'm not as down on Darnold as a lot of people are. I know I was surprised Juju didn't get an offer from the Jets to go up there and play and strengthen that team from that perspective. But it's going to be curious because you're right in terms of the quarterback still moving. Were you surprised at all the 1-year deals?
No, I mean, that's just the way some of this goes down. I mean, I think what's happening here is all these teams are hedging their bets for the draft, and Saints are in a different boat because they're trying to figure out Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, who's going to be their long-term solution. And that I don't think that necessarily totally rules them out of drafting quarterback either. But I think Washington, Chicago, New England, these teams are picking right outside of the top 15, just on the borderline there. And it's hard to know if that quarterback of choice is going to drop to you there. So you have to hedge your bets a little bit that, look, it may not happen. It may not work out. Some team might be aggressive and go get the quarterback. So you kind of have to look at the board and say, who's going to be a threat to take away a quarterback? You pretty much have to operate that Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. That's a done deal. But everything else is a bit of a wild card, starting with the Jets, number 2 at Zach Wilson. So then you go down and you would say, okay, so you have the Jets, you have the Panthers. Those look like the most likely teams to go after quarterback. Then you might look at the Broncos and 49ers. What did they do? Are they going to go after quarterback? So there's a lot of decisions to be made early here. And there's a lot of teams there that also already have quarterbacks, either a veteran they traded for or that they have an option elsewhere that they look at. So it's really hard to see how the first round is going to play out, but I think what's going to happen is you're going to have to trade up the board to get a quarterback because you just have too many entry points, starting with the Falcons there, probably at the number 4 behind the Jets, where you can start to send things haywire here with those top 5 guys that are first rounders.
Do you think that Trevor Lawrence is a bona fide, sure, can't miss Pro Bowl, guy for Jacksonville? Because Jacksonville, they seem to make that pick and something happens to those guys when they get there. I mean, they spent a ton of money on free agency over the last 20 years. $1 billion, I think I read somewhere. And then they have a bunch of high draft picks and they just seem to be running in quicksand for the most part.
Yeah, I think you have to, though, separate the quarterback now from their previous picks. Because you look at the 3 first rounders and Byron Leftwich, he's found a different type of career now. It's successful. You've had Blaine Gabbert come in there, and then you've had Blake Bortles. But none of those guys had the same pedigree of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, none of those guys did. They had very successful college careers, and they had some upside and athleticism. But the makeup of Trevor Lawrence, this guy has not just been a high-level quarterback since he got to Clemson, but he's also won. And that's the biggest thing I look for sometimes with the quarterback. Sometimes they can be like raw talent that ends up in the right situation, like Patrick Mahomes. You put his college resume, you wouldn't say a lot, but you have a resume like Deshaun Watson that on the field, you what you were getting. And then the Bears kind of took that high upside athletic guy, Mitchell Trubisky, and it didn't work out. So combines all those factors: high upside athletic guy who's won a lot at a high level. And what you see is what you get with him: the arm, the ability to move and throw the ball. The other guys, I mean, Zach Wilson has a great skill set. You look at Trey Lance, but these guys are two raw prospects. They haven't played a lot in big situations the way that Trevor Lawrence has. So you might have that comfort level a little bit more at Justin Fields, because in 2 years he's played in a lot of big situations and come through and been in two big programs at Georgia and Ohio State. So It's all about how you break it down. But I think Trevor Lawrence is legitimately physically one of the best prospects we've ever seen at quarterback. Now the question becomes is, how do the Jaguars kind of support him well? And right now they have some voids. I mean, you look at their passing game, DJ Chark and Marvin Jones. Cam Robinson's your best tackle. At least you have a running game there with James Robinson. So there are some pieces you like, and that's going to be the biggest thing for Urban Meyer and that staff, is that cater to Trevor Lawrence a little bit more and don't kind of hold back and trying to give him all the help he needs through draft picks and free agency.
He might have a benefit there too, having Urban Meyer coming in there, who's coming from that. I know he's been out of the game for a little bit, but he still has that I've been in the college mentality for so long that I can kind of mold this guy from where he was to where we need him to be. It'll be a transitional thing right there that he might be really good at. So Lawrence goes number one. Who's your next four? Who's your next four quarterbacks?
Right now, I do still like Zach Wilson. I don't know if it's going to be the Jets at number two, but I still think he's probably going to go number two to some team. I just like everything he does. I've seen him play quite a bit. And again, he checks all the boxes of what you want in the modern NFL. Accuracy, the arm, can move around. I look at Trey Lance. This guy, if you could put it together with the right coach and give him a good experience, I mean, he's a special guy as well. I mean, you'd have to kind of use his running to his strengths in the NFL to kind of get his feet wet. He's very young. So he's kind of a blank canvas there. If you can put the right masterpiece strokes on him, you might have a really great quarterback. Justin Fields, he can do a little bit of everything as well. So I think that's how I look at those top four. And then Mac Jones, I mean, he's no slouch. I mean, he just led a team to the national title with one of the most prolific offenses we've ever seen. And again, it's all about the systems these guys land in, the support they have, because all these quarterbacks, if you really take a dive into it, there's not that much separates them. Maybe Lawrence has a jump over the other four, but when you look at what they could all be, it all comes down to the coaching and system and support they get going forward once they're all on even playing field.
How about Kyle Trask?
I like him too, but I think he's more of a second round pick. That might be an option for a team like the Saints or the Steelers, where they want to stash somebody and know that they're not going to start that guy right away. I don't know if you would go in like the Drew Lock situation, that we're going to use a second round pick and try to start this guy right away. He could fall to the third round. I mean, just depending on how many teams satisfy their needs and how many teams are tabling quarterback. But like the Patriots might be a good place too. You have 1 year deal with Cam Newton. Trask is a guy that can sit and learn. It takes a while to absorb that offense, but we've seen it with Jimmy Garoppolo. They used a second round pick on him. Eventually, he was groomed well in that offense. So it's going to be some of those teams that are looking ahead to 2023 that I think are going to be in for Trask there in the second or possibly third round.
Could Garoppolo end up back in New England?
There's always a possibility of that. I mean, really, it depends on what the 49ers do here. Now, right now in my mock draft for Sporting News, them taking Mac Jones, and I don't know why the 49ers are not more interested in getting out of this contract, because it's easy to do so. Another team that I think about that could also get out of the contract if they wanted to were the Raiders, but it's hard to do that because Derek Carr is playing well, but you also have a lot of holes in a lot of places here, and you could save some money there. So maybe Carr or Garoppolo, somebody like that, surprisingly will become available here late in the process. And I think that's another thing these teams that have invested mildly in quarterback are also waiting for, is maybe someone else will become available because of the results of the draft that you can go after. So be careful with quarterback now, knowing there's not a lot of options. So far, with Russell Wilson not being traded, Deshaun Watson kind of in limbo, Sam Darnold may not be out there. So just be patient there. We already know Carson Wentz has been traded. So I think those other teams just have to prepare for anything that's available later in the draft or free agency.
Man, you've been doing this forever. Have you ever seen this much chaos around the quarterback position? Because I've been watching the NFL since mid 70s and since I was a little kid. I don't ever remember the quarterback position being so in flux, so much movement, so much indecisiveness.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is the way the NFL is right now is that you have to be a quarterback have to win in this league. That's just this simple fact. You're not going to hide your quarterback. You're not going to win with a caretaker anymore. I mean, Tom Brady was a caretaker just a couple of years ago when New England wasn't giving him help.
Yeah.
He goes to Tampa Bay and he's the playmaker again. So, I mean, you look at Patrick Mahomes, what he did, obviously, lift a team there. You cannot just have the bridge quarterback mentality. And you get a team like the Panthers. What happened? They went out and got Teddy Bridgewater. Immediately, they were frustrated by it. I mean, they want to go for that ceiling at quarterback. If you're not always going for the highest ceiling at quarterback, you're not going to have a chance to win a lot of games in this league. So the turnover is higher. You run out of patience after 3 years. If that guy doesn't deliver, you got to move on and look for someone special. So you're trying to hit on somebody at least is going to give you a chance to win a championship if you build enough support around them. And there are very few guys like that. And the bust rate is pretty high. So you have to keep trying until you get that guy. And once you get that guy, the window's open for you to win championships, get to the playoffs consistently.
In terms of quarter or coaches too, I mean, let's face it. If you don't win in those first 2-3 years, you're going to be gone. You're going to be gone if you're not. They give you maybe that 3-year window. It's a quick turnaround. We're going to give you all the resources you need, but we want you to win right away. Hey, okay, so let's say Lawrence number 1, Zach Wilson number 2. Finish your top 10.
Yeah, I don't know if I can go as deep because this quarterback class, we might run out of options here pretty soon. But
no, but I mean, it doesn't have to be a quarterback. Finish your top 10 picks.
Top 10 overall. Got you.
Yep.
Well, I do like Kyle Pitts over just as a special player, but I like Jamar Chase the most at wide receiver. Then I like Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle from Oregon. Then I would say Pitts comes in after that. The quarterbacks kind of interspersed in that top 10. The quarterbacks I would put in the top 10 are Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, and Fields. Then rounding it out, I mean, I do like a couple more offensive tackles. There might be just outside the top 10 for some. Rashawn Slater of Northwestern and Christian Darrisaw of Virginia Tech. You look defensively, it's a little tougher, but I do like the two corners there, Caleb Farley of Virginia Tech and Patrick Surtain of Alabama. So both of those guys, it's kind of a mix of those guys going in the top 10 to 15. Just depends on what teams settle on here in the end. And those two extra quarterbacks there, Fields and Jones, throw a wrench into this as well.
I've made no beef about it. I've told you I was a Steeler fan. Where do you see them going at number 24 with all the changes they've made? Do you think they go to corner now with cutting Nelson free? Do you think they get themselves the top tackle on the board? Might they pull a surprise move up and get a Trey Lance to play under Ben Roethlisberger for a year?
Yeah, so far I haven't seen the Steelers have that kind of aggression to go up and get quarterbacks. It doesn't seem to be something they do. But it might change here because this is it. Lame duck season probably for Ben Roethlisberger. So that might change their thinking. But right now, I think their top two priorities, if what we think they say is true with Zach Banner taking over at left tackle here, that they need a right tackle. And that would say Taven Jenkins from Oklahoma State. He's the best pure right tackle. And that's why if you've looked at a lot of Steelers mock drafts, including the one we have at Sporting News, that seems to be the sweet spot for that player and that team need. But I've also attached them quite a bit to cornerbacks here through the process. Is J.C. Horn of South Carolina fall. I think he would be a good fit for defense there to be groomed. And they're obviously lost Mike Hilton, kept Cameron Sutton. Joe Hayden needs to be replaced here soon as well. So corner is a big need. But I think you'll kind of see the hand tip a little bit. Like if the Steelers are looking at a corner or a quarterback, then they're looking ahead to the future a little bit. If they're saying we got to replace this tackle right away, that's a key move we need. Or they look and say we need maybe some edge rushing reinforcement, then they're trying to win now. So the Steelers definitely have a big decision to make, but I would lean right now offensive tackle or corner for them at that pick.
Interesting. Today they freed up, I think about 3.3, something like that. They had a little deal worked out with Eric Ebron, who is actually in the last year of his deal there. They worked something out. They've found the voidable years now. That seems to be the new catch-all in the contract stuff, the voidable years. And they now are about 14 million under the cap. So I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. Like I said early, some of these teams are going to have to cut some more guys loose, which might give them some flexibility, finding a corner, finding a tackle going forward. So do you see, well, let's go here. Everyone knows the big names out there. Talk about somebody that we don't know about that's going to sneak into that top first round. Somebody that's a diamond in the rough that nobody's really discussing.
Yeah, there's definitely a few candidates for that. I mean, he's a guy that have teetered back and forth into the mock draft. Trayvon Morig, the safety from TCU. I think if people know about him, but safeties, it just doesn't excite people as much in the draft. So, but he's a guy that you can plug and play in a lot of places, and he's just going to make a lot of plays for you. And we've seen guys like Derwin James, when healthy, taken late in the first round, what a big impact he's had. Some other guys over the years that safety, sometimes what you see is what you get. It's an interchangeable position in the NFL, free or strong. So you can get a guy that simply makes a lot of plays there that you would be excited about. I don't know if there's any like super secret guys that you would look at, but I'd say one player that could go in the first round that could have a big impact and up being a late round steal is Levi Onwuzurike, the tackle from Washington. Right now, I think Christian Barmore is the only tackle that is surefire to go in the first round. He just did a lot for Alabama that final year and really boosted his stock in the playoffs. He's got a lot of gloss to him. But here's an underrated player that could be taking a defensive tackle. So if you go for the offbeat positions a little bit, maybe people are all in on offensive tackle or wide receiver or quarterback. You go a little bit away from those positions, go against the grain a little bit. That's when you find those stars.
If you had your choice of Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and Javonte Williams, who are you taking?
It just depends what kind of team I am at this point. To me, it's interchangeable. Najee Harris is ahead of Travis Etienne on my board, mainly because I just like the way Harris runs. He's a little bit more powerful. He can catch passes as well. So there's that. But I could definitely see a scenario where Etienne goes ahead of Najee Harris in the draft, and it just depends. I mean, the Buccaneers might say, look, we got a power back. We want this guy that's more dynamic in the passing game, kind of as a luxury pick in number 31. We haven't re-signed Leonard Fournette. Let's go for Etienne. Another team like the Jets could be sitting there or 23 or early in the second round and say, look, we need a running back here to kind of shore up our offense. I mean, they did sign Tevin Coleman, but that's not going to move the needle much in your running game. So you look at Atlanta or the Jets, they might say, look, we need a guy that can touch the ball for 3 downs, be a workhorse, carry our team. So it'll be interesting to see if teams are reluctant to use a first-round pick. That's been the case here, even with really talented backs such as Dalvin Cook, and they had to wait, and Alvin Kamara. So we'll see if they want to invest that highly. But again, I think it depends. I don't think you can really go wrong with either of those two backs if you have a good usage in mind for them.
Does it scare you, Najee Harris being 23, though? Like he's 23. His first contract, he'd end around 27, 28.
Yeah, he does have quite a bit of running mileage on him for the first 3 years as well. So that is a bit of concern. But I look at him, though, I think he's strong, can hold up here for a few years at least and give you some good production. So Etienne, I think, has been rather fresh because they've spread the ball around a little bit. He came
Yeah.
back, and I think he made a good decision there. So, again, if you're a team that likes to use your back a lot in the passing game and you want an Alvin Kamara type, then you might say, yeah, I want to get Etienne. If you want a different type of back and just a guy that you're hoping to pound between the tackles a little bit more, then you go Najee Harris. But yeah, it is a bit of a concern. We've seen Alabama backs of late, Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris. They've been up and down a little bit early in their
Sure.
careers, but I do think Harris might be the best of all of them because again, he's got the durability and he's got the ability to get it going in the passing game as well, which is not always the case with all the Alabama backs. Jacobs was pretty complete coming in, but I think Harris is a better prospect this year.
How about the kid out of Oklahoma? I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but I can see him running the ball. Uh,
You're talking about Ramondre Stevenson?
yes, yes.
Yeah, he's coming up the boards a little bit. We know Oklahoma has had a pretty good success of different backs going in from Adrian Peterson to John Mixon. It didn't quite work out for Rodney Anderson a few years ago here, but yeah, Oklahoma has a good rushing system. We know their offense is pretty reliable here. I think he'd be pretty solid here. I think you have a couple of guys. If you look at Kenneth Gainwell of Memphis, is another intriguing prospect. The two guys from North Carolina, you mentioned one of them. The other is Michael Carter. So there are definitely some options here. But again, most teams look at running backs different. I think if you're looking at guys that are going to have a high volume of touches, I think it starts and ends with Harrison Etienne. But if you're looking for a complementary runner, I think all these other guys can fit different offenses. So it's really about zone blocking. What do you use? Can you plug them in? And we also know we saw the Jaguars totally punt on drafting a running back, and they ended up with one of the best rookies there last season, James Robinson. So
Yeah, absolutely.
there's going to be some gems there, and it's really again running back is a lot like quarterback. Give us the right system, right work ethic, good person to develop you, who's running the ball with you, who's blocking for you. All these things are going to be a big factor in how you ultimately are.
Yeah. I'm wondering if Derrick Henry is going to reset the running back market. Maybe not financially, but with teams might take a step back, start running the ball more because defenses are coming out in nickel and dime packages because of so much passing. I'm curious to see if that's going to happen going forward because you do have some big, strong backs coming out. That'll be interesting to watch transpire. Let's get a little controversial. Who's getting hyped that we should stay away from?
That's a good question. I mean, we just know by history that the quarterback bust rate is going to be there. Look,
Yeah.
There's probably going to be 2 to 3 of these guys that don't pan out. As much as we're talking about how excited we are for them to go in the draft, you look at. I'd say maybe I worry about Kyle Pitts a little bit because he's a great athlete and I love watching him play, and he's a special tight end, but the history of taking tight ends early is not great, especially one that you're going to use more as a wide receiver hybrid. So there's a little bit of trepidation there. I think you have to be comfortable with a lot of other positions to take Kyle Pitts, just because it is a bit of a luxury pick early, and that can not work out in your favor. So you have to be careful there. I think Micah Parsons also worries me a little bit. How high do I want to invest in linebacker when I can wait a little bit and get Dylan Moses and some good value later in the draft? So I'd say that's where you would start here for the most part of guys that could disappoint. I'm also not a big fan of Rondale Moore. I know he's got a special skill set, but the durability, what position are you going to play him at? To me, I think that's going to be tough. I see him more as a gadget slot type player where I think there's a lot of very good overall wide receivers that I would rather have instead of Rondale Moore.
I mean, he's just, I get that he's got that skill set, but he's just not very big. And those guys are going to go after him at the next level. There's no question about it. Who should I be looking for in the fall now? Like what guys do I need to keep an eye out for the next round for the 2022 draft?
Yeah, I think we're going to see it play out a little bit, but I think you start with. Oh, this is a tough question. I'll say that. Usually, I wait to scout out next year until we get through this year, so I don't have a lot of answers for you there. I'll be quite honest with you, but Some guys that returned, I think Chris Olave, it was a surprise return to Ohio State. I think he could be a special wide receiver. I think that was a good decision by him to go back and get a little bit better. So he's one guy that I want to see what happens to him next year. And I think you have potential for some of these bigger programs to have that surprise pick. Because keep in mind, I don't know if we had Joe Burrow or Mac Jones on the radar years before they were drafted. So it really can change it a lot in a hurry. So I don't want to go too nuts here on that. But yeah, I mean, I think the guys that return like Olave could have a big impact here. And I think it was a good decision sometimes if your position is crowded, and that's the case with him.
How about a guy like Sam Howell? Is he going to be a bona fide NFL QB when he hits the league?
I think he's worth watching, but these things can change in a hurry. Because I thought Sam Ellinger was going to have a little bit more value this year.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure what you're going to get at this point from Howell. So it definitely is a build your own quarterback stock kind of season. Like seemingly that's what happens. Is like that senior or final season in college is a showcase for trying to see what you can do.
At the end of the day, who really needs to draft well to get themselves to the next level? Who needs to be able to pass the Chiefs and Tampa at the end of the day? Who's right on the cusp, I should say?
Well, the Browns, we mentioned, they made some moves to get there. The Dolphins could really help themselves with those 2 first-round picks and extra picks, really, throughout the draft from the Texans. So they have a chance. I mean, they were 10-6 last year, and they didn't see the full potential of Tua. So that's a team I'm definitely putting on the radar, as well as the Browns with the multiple picks and all that. I think in the NFC, the Cardinals could really help themselves. I think they're getting closer here. The 49ers could be in for a big rebound this season to get things done. I think the Packers may need to draft with more immediacy this year to get past the Buccaneers. So maybe not drafting a quarterback to replace Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers is going to be an MVP. That would be a good start. So any team that was close last year that didn't quite make it, be aggressive to make those moves. I think another team, Colts, coming off a strong year. Do they try to think that Carson Wentz is the guy that won 11 games with Phillip Rivers last year? So that's another team I'm also watching to see come through here in the draft.
I do a final segment. It's we just got to know, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. We just got to know who you think are the 3 or 4 can't miss prospects coming out of this draft. And it doesn't have to start with Trevor Lawrence or go to Zach Wilson. It can be any one of these guys, either side of the ball, any position.
Well, I'm going to go with the history of what I know. And I'm going to say, if you play offensive line, I'm going to trust you the most here in this draft. So that's just the way I am, because I've seen this time and time again. There's been some busts, but a lot of those have been years back. But you look at Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, Christian Darrisaw, Elijah Vera Tucker. These guys are not going to miss here for your offensive line. And you can put them at tackle and you'll feel good about them. I also have a pretty good feeling about Devonta Smith. I know I didn't mention him in the top 10, but he is definitely in my top 10. Jalen Waddle may have a little bit of bust factor because he's more of a speed threat. But Devonta Smith, you just look at the guy, the way the guy works. I don't care what size he is, the number. I think he's like has that work ethic that you want in a receiver. So he's, to me, a guy that can't miss. You plug him in any offense, he's going to be fine here, barring injury. So I start with those offensive linemen. I like Devonta Smith. I feel the safest about those picks, given the history of bust rate of the other positions.
I appreciate all your time. It was a fantastic talk about the draft. We're looking forward to hearing how things play themselves out. Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News, NFL guru. Listen to Vinnie on his fantasy podcast. Thanks again, Vinnie. Hope to catch up with you real soon.
Yep, thanks for having me.
I'd like to tell you a story of heroes and warriors who played for the glory. They're about to see it in your stadium chair. We know all your teams and we can go on for days. It's game time from the original. Highlights and playoffs and very special guests. It's game time on the original Sportscast show by the best.